Musician turned horror filmmaker Rob Zombie's left his mark on the movie industry with cult-like movies such as House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, the Halloween remake, and Halloween 2. Now, what we got here, his most recent film, Lords of Salem, it doesn't carry the same spastic, gory, violent kind of style that his previous films, that they're all infamous for. What we got here is more of a Kubrick-inspired, Argento-inspired, slow-paced, 70s-esque kind of horror film that doesn't really have to do with what mainstream American horror has really been tackling lately. Really, that mainly being haunted house movies and ghost movies. The trend that Hollywood is starting to turn into a cash cow. What Rob Zombie did, he decided to take cues from Stanley Kubrick and other filmmakers who I can't really recall right now aside from Dario Argento. He's taken these cues and he decided to come up with his own psychological mindfuckery that's bound to make people never forget this film, or at least not forget it for the longest time. And of course, like I just said, this movie is Lords of Salem. Now, when you put more thought about who Zombie might have gotten his influence from, you might recall movies like David Lynch's Eraserhead, or Ken Russell's Altered States, or Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Basically horror films that delve into surreal territory and focus heavily on atmosphere and visuals. And bottom line, Lords of Salem is that surreal horror film. So keep in mind that this movie is not catering to today's ADD audience that really caters into run-of-the-mill cow cash horror films that focus on nothing but found footage exorcisms or haunted houses or ghosts or anything of the sort. Anything that's pretty much a trend for Hollywood to make cash off of. No, Lords of Salem is a horror film that is trying to do something different. It's taking cues from older horror films and molding itself into this beast that just pretty much breaks itself away from the crowd. It's the outcast of horror. Not to say that's necessarily a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all, really. It's just something that people aren't going to be used to. Something brand new. It never fares too well in the initial stages. We look at classics like The Shining and Eraserhead, and we just talk about how frightening they are. Well, you got to look back then, and you got to realize that these movies were innovative for their time, but because they were so innovative, nobody was really used to what they were trying to do. So of course they got trashed in the beginning. Movies like The Shining didn't really do too well in the beginning, but it's a classic now. Same goes for David Lynch's Eraserhead. People found it way too bizarre and weird when it was first released, but looking back on it now, it's a unique film. It's spectacular. And same goes for Lords of Salem. It's a film that it breaks itself away from the normal conventions of Hollywood, and that's a very good thing. But because of that, initial reception is not going to fare too well. But that's expected with a movie like this. A lot of horror films that do dive into surreal territory never really do too well in the initial stages anyway. That's why most of them are cult classics, because eventually, later in the future, they find their audience. But what I'm trying to say is that for anyone who's planning to see this movie, do not expect anything that you are used to. Do not expect the fast editing, the fast-paced kind of horror film that deals with the paranormal. By paranormal, I mean, ghost hauntings, house hauntings, basically, and stuff like that. No, prepare for something different. Prepare for a slow burn styled, psychological, surreal horror film that will fuck the living shit out of your mind. Because I guarantee that the imagery used in this movie, it will not be leaving your mind anytime soon. It's going to stick with you for the past few days. It did that to me. Actually, I'm still... As I'm speaking right now, I'm still, recycling through my mind and just bringing up these beautifully framed, these amazing scenes that just look amazing, but they're so insane, and they're so surreal that it's something different. It's something unique. Aside from my moment of fanboy praise right there, let me just say this is a breakaway from Rob Zombie's usual style. This is not something he's done before. So if you're a Rob Zombie fan, especially of his older films, and prepare for something different. And for any person who loves horror movies, especially any person who's really used to today's horror films, prepare for something different. That's all I will say. So the movie follows a young woman named Heidi, and this woman is a local DJ for the town of Salem. and she receives this mysterious record from this unknown group called the Lords, who are also coming to the town of Salem to perform for one night only. And I say that in quotation marks. So she takes this record and she takes it home and she plays it, and it turns out that this record is nothing but a bunch of evil, satanic sounds that unleash this power that begin to send Heidi into this hallucinogenic, horrifying nightmare that pretty much says fuck reality. And it's not a case where reality and nightmares are blurred. It's a case where reality is getting distorted and pretty much kicked out the door, and nightmare becomes the reality pretty much. So as this goes on, she's losing her mind. Her brain is pretty much frying. It's melting. She can no longer trust people surrounding her. None of her co-workers, none of the people who live in her apartment, nothing. And watching this girl just lose her shit throughout the movie, that's the strongest point of the movie. What a lot of people need to realize is that this movie does not have a plot. And to be honest, this is the kind of movie that doesn't need a plot either. You have those people who like to trash the movie and say, "Oh, well, the story wasn't that great. We needed a better story." And this just isn't one of those movies. You know what I mean? Movies like that exist for the reason to be viewed as an experience rather than a fucking story. Movies like 2001, Enter the Void, movies like these. There are movies that exist that are not meant to be viewed as a story, only as an experience. And this is what Lords of Salem is. The key strong point of this movie are Heidi's hallucinogenic phases, and the fact that she gets lost into this demonic world that's for some reason obsessed with her and wants something from her. I won't say what, but they want something from her. And that's pretty much all you need to see. You don't need this deep explanation about why this is happening or who these people are. You already get enough of that. You get enough to fill you up. You get enough to at least understand the basic, the basics of what's going on. You get enough information as to why it's happening too. You're not going to understand the entire situation 100%, but you're going to understand enough so that you won't be left in the dark. You're going to be in the light. People are going to keep you around, but at the same time, they're still going to leave you lagging behind. It teases you enough as to where you actually want to keep jogging to the point where you want to catch up with it, but you're never going to catch up. That's the point. But aside from the visuals, what's really impressive is the fact that the movie does not feel the need to take a cheap step into jump scare territory. It actually does what it can to build atmosphere, to build this eerie feeling, something that makes you feel unsettled. It takes its time. It's a slow burner. It does what The Shining did. Actually, it does exactly what The Shining did. If you've seen The Shining, I'm sure you can recall the general time lapse, from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday. And basically, this is what Lords of Salem does. And just like in the movie, as the days progress, Jack's condition gets much, much, much worse until he pretty much hits the bottom, and is pretty much lost in fucking insanity. And the same goes for Heidi. It takes so many cues from older films on how to build the atmosphere and how to keep the audience guessing on what's going to come next, that it's really impressive, especially for a horror movie of modern times. And that's what I really like about this movie, the fact that you cannot predict anything that happens. A lot of horror movies today are predictable, unfortunately. Not to say that horror movies back then were never ever predictable, but in today's state where everything is pretty much trending, there's a lot of repeats going on, and you can kind of get the general idea of what a horror movie is going to do nowadays. There's really no mystery surrounding a horror movie nowadays, but Lords of Salem, it's nothing but mystery. You don't know how this girl's hallucinogenic mindset, ever melting brain. Now, you don't know what it's gonna put onto the screen next. You're left wondering, like, all right, well, that was one hell of a trip. Oh, well, it went from Tuesday to Wednesday, so let's see what's in store for us here. It changes every single time. It doesn't really repeat itself. It gets more and more intense, and the imagery becomes more and more surreal, a bit absurd at times, I will admit that. But overall, The movie does enough to make sure it stays mysterious, ambiguous, unpredictable, and it definitely succeeds in that regard. Alright, now let's talk about the leading actress for a second. Rob Zombie's wife, Sherry. Rob, look, we all know that she's the one screwing you at the end of the day, so I guess you feel the need to repay her by putting her as the main role in your movies. I can also understand if you do not want to shell out millions of dollars for a professional actress. I can understand that's a smart choice, but Rob, I think it's time to start doing something different. Sherry, she's nothing wrong with her. She ain't the world's greatest actress, not even close. She's okay, but Rob, you really got to start branch out, please. Please find us another actress to surprise us with in your next movie, because that doesn't necessarily mean you need to pay for some professional actress and give her millions. You can look for some ever-growing yet small actress who you can give a couple of thousands to, please. I thought Sherry's performance in Lords of Salem, surprisingly, I thought she did very well. She held her ground. She was a bit shaky at times, but overall, she held herself and did well up until the ending of the movie. But please, Rob, just find somebody else, please. Nothing against Sherry. I'm not saying I don't want to see her in any more of your movies, but I really think it's time that you ought to shake it up a bit, please. But and that's my opinion on that. But aside from that, like I said, her performance was it was decent for the movie, for the kind of movie that it was, for the kind of fucked up drugged up character who was rehabilitating, but falling back into madness, but not through the use of drugs, through the power of witchcraft. I thought she did pretty well. Not it's a horror movie. You're not looking for an Oscar worthy performance. Just enough to get you through the entire movie, and she fared well. So kudos to her. So as for Rob Zombie and everything he's done thus far, I'd say The Lords of Salem, it's definitely something special. It's one of his top films. Some people might put The Devil's Rejects as number one, or some people might have a different list, but honestly, I'm gonna put Lords of Salem as the best film he's made thus far, mainly because it's such a huge departure from his usual style, and the fact that he's doing something so different, and it shows that he's very versatile, and it shows that he knows horror. He has heart and soul for horror, and this shows that he's maturing as a filmmaker. So, and not only that, Rob's also interested in not directing just horror films. He wants to branch out to more and more, for different kinds of horror films. So, showing as how this movie showing that his skills have definitely improved over the years. It shows that he may not be the most mature filmmaker, but he's maturing on the technical side. It's showing he's capable of doing things. It shows that he's capable of making fantastic looking movies. He can frame a shot. He can really play with somebody's mind. He can make great use of atmosphere, use of surreal imagery. He's growing. He can do many things. He's growing. He's learning how to do many things. So, knowing how versatile he is, knowing that he's willing to depart from what he does, something that gave him success, really gives me a lot of hope for this guy. He could really turn into something special in the future. I can see him being a cult kind of icon in the future when it comes to horror a little bit, but if he keeps it up and he keeps doing what he does, different kind of horror films and just different kinds of films in general, he can really be something special. So let's keep an eye on that. Rob Zombie's not one of my favorite directors, but I do think he is a special case. For better or worse, some people like him, some people don't. But hey, I don't think that's a bad thing. When you're doing something enough where people can sway their opinion from left to right without having a common middle ground, that shows that you're really doing something different. So be proud of that, Rob. Kudos to you for making something different, for being willing to explore different places that you've never been to, willing to leave the style that gave you the success you have now. Yeah, kudos to you, man. But given all of that, there's really not much else to say about Lords of Salem. It's really a surreal, visual, atmospheric driven film. You can't really talk about the movie unless you've seen it. You know what I mean? When people talk about the movie, they're usually talking about key scenes that look visually look fantastic, and scenes that are just fucking horrific and trippy. You know what I mean? You know, and that being that kind of movie, I can't really say much for people who haven't seen it, because it's gonna ruin the surprise and effect that it holds in store, you know, for them. But what I will say is that it's a fantastic, surreal film. Great imagery. I've said that plenty of times, but it's just true. And with the imagery leading up to this unbelievable climax, you know, the last 10 to 15 minutes of the movie, I'd say, think of 2001: A Space Odyssey. You're watching this normal, slow sci-fi film, and then all of a sudden the fucking Stargate sequence comes up, and you're just like, whoa, what the fuck? I did not see this coming at all. Same can be said for Lords of Salem. It has you're used to the approach of the girl losing her mind as the movie goes on, but you really don't expect the movie to really hit the bottom of the barrel when it comes to insanity that you see in the last 10 to 15 minutes. So prepare to be surprised, because this movie does have a lot in store for the viewers. But aside from that, I highly recommend The Lords of Salem. I do realize that it's not for everybody, and it will put a few people off, but I also do realize that there are a lot of people who will appreciate this movie, and who will give Rob Zombie kudos for pretty much putting some more heart and soul into the horror genre of today, because today's horror genre, it's pretty sad, you know. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Lords of Salem. Comment, subscribe, do whatever you like, and like the video too. Please discuss the movie in the in the comments. So please do that, and stay tuned for another video.